Robin Hood because Robin Hood. I watched The Jungle Book, and then I watched The Lion King. I watched those as a kid, and I didn't watch the others.
Because, I mean, when I watched Batman Returns, I was kind of like, yeah. No, it's not even Batman Returns, is it? It's the original Batman.
Working through the box sets, you know, I told you that I watched Too Fast, Too Furious and Tokyo Drift the day before yesterday, and then yesterday. So, what did you do today? Well, I watched The West Wing, and then they like it, and God's help me, but I think I like that they like it too. Yeah, I said as I watched Lucy paused to sniff a turd in the road.
Well, no. Yeah, then I watched Finding Nemo, and there sharks are nice things, and you know, fish are
in real life. I mean, you know, I watched Luther Series 4, and that was like shortly after I had written the controversial.
I couldn't watch it live because I was doing D&D. And so, I watched it at midnight, having been up since 9 AM.
I watched Hannibal, right? And there will be a review of Hannibal season 2, and
partly because of, you know, like I think one of the first fan vids I watched was Kasabian's Hulk. I watched this the first time after having watched Trilby's review of the first film I think I watched was, you know. Now I've got 3 films out, you know, from timeline that when you restart, if you remember, I watched it from the 10-minute mark, and you can just click 10 minutes
videos before, and I'm only doing it now a bit because I watched Dodger's video and I was like, crap, it's 8 PM and I haven't today. Finally, at last, I watched it, and here's the thing, right? You know, it was kind of unavoidable, the song. Well, actually, this is scary, because I did feel scared watching it. Although, as I said, I watched it late at night, whilst in bed. Evil tendencies in me, in the sense of, like, you know, I watched a Let's Play of Bioshock, and I'm like, you know what, this Andrew Ryan guy is...
Okay, not on the first night. Not on that night. Because when I watched it, the night...
But we've got space to do Doctor Who fan productions, right? And I watched so much of this stuff, and there is a guy there called...
I don't like it. I am, you know, I'll watch the series. I'll try to watch the series.
That. And yeah, yesterday I watched Withnail and I watched the special editions for Withnail and I. The fact that essentially the first video of his that I watched, I saw him basically say that he felt ashamed.
I didn't watch it, or it was just so horrible. But I watched Local Hero first, and you know, I think
because people forget. They forget. You know, I watch I listen to so many podcasts, and it's kind of like I watched Full Metal Jacket, knowing that wars are fucking bad. I watched Robin Hood, which was good because Robin Hood. Okay, 3 films. I watched Robin Hood because Robin Hood.
Shit for those moments, because those moments will be there, and you know how I know that? Because when I watched A Good Man Goes to War, I had no clue, but fuck it, I signed up and I watched it, and So, armed with that information, I watched and I waited. And eventually 4chan.
Here's the thing, right? A weak story can still be enjoyed. I mean, I watch SF Debris reviews of Star Trek Voyager.
Mini break with my sister in London. I watched Wally, and that was so bloody good. I mean, honestly, they tackled obesity.
And I watched his videos and I learned and I gained. I was inspired. He must have severed connections to the brain as I couldn't see with my left eye, thankfully. But I watched with my right eye as he blocked my left eye.
Christopher Eccleston version of the Doctor that is real. And like, I watched Cracker. And I watched like the complete thing, or as complete as
more or less the same thing because they're both basically restarting the franchise. I watched them when I got the original Amazon DVDs.
I walked in universes where the laws of physics were devised by the mind of a madman. And I watched universes freeze. Watch as I tear apart your childhood. But honestly, considering I watched it after Chronicle, I was clear.
Obviously, with Kalman syndrome, I had less testosterone than the average woman. When I watched these adverts that were like, I want to focus on the film and you're all being annoying, can please just shut the fuck up. But I went and I watched The Hitchhiker's Guide.
I had none of this, oh, my favourite Doctor was the Doctor I watched growing up nonsense. Because, funnily enough, I grew up in the wilderness years, so
Every heart's desire. I'd take you for walks and you'd snuggle up as I watched Professor Logisty. He stroked her cheek gently and said,
a Let's Play that really imprinted on me. Just kind of, I watched it and it, for whatever reason, it lurked in my...
So, what did you do today? Well, I watched The West Wing. And then, you know, Disney. Or, you know, like in, I mean, obviously, I watched Frozen and sort of reviewed that. I also think it is horrible that there are bombs dropping on Syria. You know, I watched that video where Owen Jones, example of a game that I played originally on the PS2 and I loved, and then I watched a Let's Play of it by Stock17.
Basically, this was the last Doctor Who episode I watched before I became a Doctor Who fan and discovered primary school. I killed 2 goldfish. I fished them out of the pond with a net and I watched them writhe and die. Recorded films, right? I've recorded the shark films that I watched for my dissertation. Now, obviously, I'm not gonna...
And it's like, okay, shower's done, what the fuck am I going to do? So, I watched Too Fast, Too Furious. And this, incidentally, was about the
work and then one day, I watched a Chugga Conroy Let's Play Pokemon. And Chugga Conroy just Let's Play.
But I watched this episode, and you know, it's in terms of Doctor Who, it's a bit of
talk about the latest Doctor Who episode. Because I did watch it. I watched it basically just because I saw the outrage.
By Bioshock 1 and 2 on Steam. There will also be a links to the Let's Plays that I watched, if you happen to be...
Like, I mean, partly because I'm an atheist, you know. Partly because I watched Jaws at a young age.
Idris Elba, just... I mean, honestly, like, I squeed when I watched Supergirl, and there's, like, an episode where because Robin Hood. Okay, 3 films. I watched Robin Hood because Robin Hood. I watched The Jungle Book, and then I watched People Who Give a Shit. But for me, it's like, you know, I watched the prequels and I watched the originals, knowing how everyone and whispered, "Think of Lucy Dance. Think of stripping her, walking her on a leash." I watched the reflection in the mirror change. Because kind of the first thing I watched, with the first memory I ever have is of watching Jaws. I was absolutely fucking everything about that film and that franchise. I watched it late at night, scared the crap out of me. And that was, you know, like, there are gonna be fucking right-wing dickheads saying, "Well, I watched your video and I'm convinced now that I'm definitely going to vote for Trump." Oh,
I watched Local Hero first, and you know, I think, and then I watched. No, then I went to Jahans. Is a good one. It really is a good one, and that was one that I watched after I had discovered, you know, comments on the film. Just a film. I'm making comments about, you know, I watched Batman, and I said,
because compared to every fucking other show I watch, there are no stakes. There are absolutely no fucking stakes. Because can't really remember when I actually saw it in the cinema. But the point is, I watched it again, kind of some years after I first. This is why I've been watching the sort of Marvel films. This is why I watched Star Trek Beyond last night. And
destruction of Superman, almost sort of going, yeah, realistically, Spider-Man wouldn't be the hero. So, after I watched Chronicle, knowing that it was the Renegade Cut guy, I love Browse Hell Tie. I watched the Nostalgia Critic. I'm a fan of the Spoonie Experiment. I'm killing bad guy. Help me! So I watched Spider-Man, and yeah, it's very much a coming of age story. It's, you know, when I watched his videos, when I watched the extra credit videos, I never had a problem. I had never had a problem with gaming compulsion.
The Grand Budapest Hotel, that's a shite film. And I watched Office Space. That's a good film. And you know, at that time I was a big fan of Total Biscuit. I watched all his WTF and his Mailbox, and so I
Obviously the first time I watched a shark film and got scared by sharks was the first ever memory I had, was watching before I discovered the Seventh Doctor and how awesome the Daleks are. I watched Doctor Who casually, but it wasn't a thing for me. It was
because obviously I watched the first Fast and the Furious film, and I watched the fourth Fast and the Furious film, Confused.
Read to you my review that I posted on Facebook like right after I watched the episode, and then I'm gonna tell you. I watched Jaws. I love Jaws. It's a brilliant film. I decided to read the novel.
Door appeared before her. I crawled out of it. "You're alive," Sally said, utterly surprised. "But I watched you die." My controvoxy is like, oh golly, that's quite a long. That video makes up quite a large amount. So I'll watch some of the videos back, and it's
okay. And I watched Charlie Brooker's election wipe yesterday, in which was frankly, I watched it while having a migraine and while my cats had a standoff, a Mexican stand. So, but you still kind of need to stop him and kill him, and in this bunch of things I watched, it's like, standing up for the people who are like, the political system doesn't fucking work, okay? And I watched, and you know, like I watched Trinity Productions and stuff like that, and I watched Doctor Who fan vids and stuff.
I watched Kevin and Perry Go Large. I watched Faulty Towers. I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I played the first 2 series on DVD last Christmas, and obviously I watched The Flash as it aired, so I'm now caught up. I know for a fact that during the kind of the year out, I watched so much of that. Awesome. Make sure not to share my liked videos, because it would just be a because I watch so many YouTube videos.
And I certainly come across them a lot in the media and stuff, and I watched X-Men First Class.
And Teeny in these AJ Plus videos, and you know, I clocked kind of straight away, good looking woman, but I watched the videos and I listened to videos and very funny. The lighting can be good again, but that's not gonna be for a bit, so sorry. On Halloween, I watched The Birds by... I'm a nerd. So much of popular culture has been spoiled for me, right? I watched the Star Wars films knowing... Now, let's play some Civ 5. Or I might watch the rest of the West Wing, I'm not sure. But I really want to play some Civ 5 right now.
Like 6th or 7th if you count the Let's Plays I watched. But so past reviews, you know, I watched Mr. TARDIS reviews, I listened to Radio Free Skaro.
Taylor Swift I basically know about because I watched Todd in the Shadows. And because actually her song Blank's story featuring Clara Oswald from Doctor Who, because basically I watched Clara Oswald's last story that she... And the people think your opinion is wrong. So, ladies and gentlemen, I watched the extended cut of The Exorcist. This is my first... Cat bowl rammed her face into the pet food and started eating. I watched her eat and felt a pang of nostalgia, for my little sylph had really grown. I mean, okay, it was, you know, headachy and achy and tiring and stuff, but I did, you know, I watched Jonathan Craig and I had a nice lunch. I always wondered why the Doctor travels alone. I suppose I watched too much of The Arrow. I thought fighting crime was...
And I watched Brows Held High. I have seen an actual avant-garde film. Comments about, you know, okay, I watched Batman, and I said, I watched Batman Begins, and I said, that I don't like Batman.
I was unemployed, and I loved video games, and I sort of did Let's Plays, and I watched a lot of Let's Plays, and...
In half, so he pukes up his own blood. That, I was just like, oh, that's... Boof! You know, I watched that, and it was like my first ever memory, so it was just like...
I was one snowflake in a blizzard, and I watched a lot of good people die. I know, said Emma. And after a moment she said,
Hey, the fandom got it wrong. Because the reason I watched the prequel trilogy after the original trilogy,
dreading going home, and I was feeling shit about it, and I watched Iron Man 3, and Iron Man 3 is all about sort of PTSD
to Christmassy things and stuff. And I watched some films, and you'll be getting reviews of Alien and Aliens
by Bioshock 1 and 2 on Steam. There will also be links to the Let's Plays that I watched. If you happen to be
the main character and you went evil, no! So I watched Spider-Man, and, you know, that was just, you know, poof! Mind blown. Playing through my head of the last time I watched or read it, and the sort of the two soundtracks and visual tracks.
I didn't watch Star Wars as a child. Well, no, I watched The Phantom Menace as a child.
I watched this. I watched Day of the Doctor late at night, like really late at night.
For Pacific Rim made it sound so deep, so intelligent, and then I watched it, and it's like, okay, this is the premise, you know, but this is the day. So lots of things been happening, and I watched many a true nerd sort of.
I've done some ideas before, written some stuff before, like about were sharks and stuff, but I watched that episode and I was inspired. I was in Moon Over Soho. It's sort of a bit Twilighty. I mean, I watched the first Twilight movie, but
Sammy spoke to Merle, and he stripped her and lowered her whole inside his mouth. I watched Merle walk away as Eliza took my
Peacekeeper Wars miniseries. I watched it as a kid, just kind of binged it late at night when it was on Channel 5.
So I'm very pleased that, you know, the one Disney film that I watched that's a proper fucking Disney princess film.
Then I watched Deep Blue Sea. I watched Deep Blue Sea and I was just utterly fucking terrified.
Obviously it was wrong, and I shouldn't have done it, and I fucking paid my fucking penance. I watched Two Girls, One Cup because I did something that was...
That is why I bought Iron Man 3 today, and that is why I watched it today, and that is why I'm reviewing it right now, before this. People say, when I watched and reviewed Spider-Man 2, people were just going like, oh no.
Taking a slice or two. Then, as I watched, two tentacles whipped out to halt the turning of Lisa on the spit. Two brought over a plate. Before this, I watched precisely two Disney films. I watched Robin Hood, which was good because Robin Hood. Okay, problems I would have. I remember the first time I watched the Farscape miniseries. It was late at night when I had.
I want to have some experience of stuff first, so I watched Chronicle because it was literally a thing of. I should explain. I used to swim an awful lot in my youth, but then I watched Deep Blue Sea.
Started to get bad again, and kind of I watched Fight Club at the end of a day when basically
Belong here. I looked into his eyes. They changed colour even as I watched, and in them I saw the rise and fall of thousand.
So when I watched Farscape today. I watched Farscape the Peacekeeper Wars today. It was sort of an interesting thing to talk about because I watched the Renegade cut. It's a tradition, you know. It started with the thing, and then I watched the Alien films.
And he's dressed like Han Solo. And this was pointed out to me because I watched a Family Guy parody of this before. He makes fantastic maps and genuinely good guy. Check out his stuff. When I watched his videos, when I watched the extra credit video...
There's literally no point talking about it. There is no more to that story. That's just it. So I watched the Pokemon movie, and it was, I remember seeing
on that night, because when I watched it, the night when I watched it was during one of those getting up at like 1 AM.
that thing that made me want to vomit the first time I watched it is now giving me hope and faith in humanity. That, yeah, it terrified me. And sharks have terrified and fascinated me to this day since I watched Jaws. And when Jaws came out, it was a
Let's play of Jurassic Park Trespasser, and I watched that Let's Play. And Trespasser is a game that is, or who watched it at 6 o'clock on Saturday or whenever it was. I watched it at midnight, in the dark, sitting on the edge of my bed. So I watched Dark Water essentially because I heard people raging and I was like, oh, when they were growing up. I don't, because when I was growing up, I watched Kevin and Perry Go Large.
Furious and Tokyo Drift the day before yesterday, and then yesterday I watched Fast 5 and Furious 6. Okay, because
I've kind of started to see a pattern, and then I watched David Mitchell's skit on the Green Party. So I watched the BBC shark documentary, and I watched it with The Wire. The Wire is one of these TV shows that I watched, and it made me think differently.
New adventures, and I watched, you know, I watched the Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who. I'm like, was Lisa later, and climb into the toy box stairs, a good girl. Carla set about her task swiftly, and I watched as Lisa left the room. I loved, and then I watched a Let's Play of it by Scott Stock 17, and in fact I watched all of his Let's Plays, I think, of them, and
I mean, I watched the finale of The Flash afterwards with Dad, and fans that I know have said, yeah, it's a piece of shit. But no, that was the only Star Wars film I watched, and I watched it when I was very young.
But yeah, I watched Too Fast, Too Furious, and that's a good film, right?
And then I watched The Shark Diaries, and it's like, I mean, the episode is fun. It was basically the first book I got on Kindle, and I loved it. I watched it on TV, and I loved it then. And honestly, during the 10th year out, I decided to build a Dalek. I watched Remembrance of the Daleks because, hey, this is the only that Joss Whedon originally wanted, and that's okay, that's fine. I certainly liked it when I watched it originally. But
White House up in this stuff, you know. I mean, it's after all, I watched for me, I watched this Doctor Who episode at 10 o'clock. I thought when I watched this that I would either come out raging and say, Disney.
Mr. TARDIS reviews, I listened to Radio Free Skaro, but, and, you know, like, I watched Trinity Productions and stuff like that, and I watched Doctor Who, saying, that's why I don't like Star Wars, because I watched it as a kid, and I hated it then. But now?
Sylvester McCoy Doctor Who story that I watched was Remembrance of the Daleks. Because Remembrance of the Daleks...
No, that was the only Star Wars film I watched, and I watched it when I was very young, and my parents basically forced me to, and they said, I'll sit.
Watched Fast 5 and Furious 6. Okay. Because obviously I watched the first Fast and the Furious film, and I watched... And when I watched Fast Get the Peacekeeper Wars, I knew that I would be wrapping up.
Who was just one of those television shows that I happened to love. Okay, so I watched it and I liked it, and I thought Dave Tennant was good. It was foreshadowed, and I ironically watch the foreshadowing after I watched The Year of Hell. Like, it does episodes where
a look of hunger on my face as he said, "Don't worry, you will have plenty of food in the next life." I watched him enjoy my ribs, and it seemed...
watched all 4 seasons. And I watched the Peacekeeper Wars as a kid, and I'm kind of waiting until
Yup, my homies! You know who I am. So, I watched Avengers Age of Ultron last night, and fuck that thing for a fucking hill of beans. So, I really like that, you know, before this, I watched precisely 2 Disney films. I suppose this is why when I read, the Virgin New Adventures, and I watched, I watched the season. I've had a fucking rough old year, but honestly, I watched that episode and it was like, okay, I'm dead. I'm dead. While Blip was still a thing. And I watched that and it was amazing. And it felt like... I love him, and he's funny and charismatic, and apart from anything else, right, I watched Superman Returns, so I was like, okay, well, the Phantom Menace is gonna be atrocious then, and then I watched it, and it wasn't. So I was kind of bracing myself.
well done. I mean, this is the thing, is that as I watched Alien, I was analysing it from a third-person objective.
I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I watched it. So, but I had a show, and I watched a film. I watched Star Trek Beyond, and look, and then I watched Tokyo Drift, and okay, this is where, for me, knowing spoilers, the multiverse. I am Alexander Gordon Jahans, and I just watched Fight Club. Well, I watched it last night, and you can...
Me, which admittedly Arkham City was never going to, because I watched Let's Play of it first, but then the mini-series, or film as I watched it, a 3-hour film. And it's a story.
I genuinely think The Phantom Menace is the best Star Wars film because I watched the original theatrical cuts of the original trilogy. And, the original trilogies are amazing, and then I watched the original trilogies, and I was just like, well, the plot's crap. Shit.
Of the Xenoblade Chronicles, it was like, after everything had gone wrong, I watched this Let's Play series.
And also, I watched the Grand Budapest Hotel. That's a shite film. And I watched Office. And I watched it in the dark and with the headphones on, out, and
I did not watch Doctor Who this week because I wanted to. I watched Doctor Who this week and that was interesting. And kind of immediately after I watched it, I was like, I need to watch it because I've played it. And as I said, I watched a Let's Play of this first. And the Let's Play was good and fun. All of mine I've loved. I mean, I watched Jaws, because obviously that's my first freaking memory. That was my review, posted right after I watched the episode. In fact, it was little. I am going to fucking cocky their fucking asses to hell and back. And that's why when I watched that video, fine, just like I'm fans of sharks because they fuck people up. But then I watched, well, no. Yeah, then I watched Finding Nemo. That is bloody fantastic. Oh, and I watched Evan Almighty. Loved the idea of, again, it being, sort of.
And, I've watched American TV shows before. I watched and loved Hannibal, right?
The one time, well, no, I was going to say, even the time I watched Phantom Menace, but no, of course, that's a piece of shit. Everyone knows that. Fuck it. Let me be evil. And so, I watched that, and I was kind of like, deeply affected, and deeply like, Jaws, because obviously that's my first freaking memory. I watched With Nail 9, which was when I was getting into Doctor Who, because it was the whole. But the point is that when I watched it, it was okay. One thing I did find a bit strange though was the fact. Cause yeah, that. Especially cause like I watched this around Christmas, so I was eating dessert with.
I have been watching a lot of telly. I watched the first series of Porridge.
And it was, there were moments that I watched now, and it's just like, but they're good actors and there's good nuggets. What actually made me buy Pacific Rim, and then I watched it. I actually got Pacific Rim, and it's loose.
Of course, to greatness, but that episode, because I watched that episode and I've been dallying about with I don't fucking know half these guys anyway. I watched the Avengers and shit. I know most of these guys. I only know
the alt-right saying horrible things about you, and then I watched your video and hey, I really like you now, and that happens a lot.
Essentially because I heard people raging and I was like, okay, I'm curious. And I watched Darkwater and it was I need people. I need to know I have people around me who I can talk to and say, I watched a film, I didn't like it.
Yeah. I think what I'm gonna do now is sort of, yesterday I watched Farscape the Peacekeeper Wars, and that was sort of at end. I decided to build a Dalek. I was interested in Top Gear. Like, I watched nothing but Top Gear, and I thought Jeremy Clarkson. Myself remembering the last time I watched something as I watch it again. And sometimes